Nothing in Wistoria was built to be simple. From the beginning, the story makes you believe there's a clear order, a well-defined enemy, and a solid line separating heroes from villains. But this sense of security has always been fragile. And when Wistoria's biggest lie finally begins to be revealed in the manga, everything that seemed stable crumbles at once. It's not a small twist, nor a hidden detail. It's the kind of revelation that completely changes how you see the tower, the mages, the supposed protectors of the world, and even the true meaning of salvation within this story. From the very first conflicts, Wistoria builds the idea that the Great Barrier and the tower exist to protect the world from an absolute threat. The narrative makes it clear that there is something terrible on the other side, something that needs to be kept sealed at all costs. This fear is what justifies sacrifices, deaths, secrets, and extreme decisions. Julius, as one of the ultimate symbols of this order, represents exactly that: confidence, authority, and the certainty that everything is under control. Therefore, when his supposed death occurs, the impact is not only emotional, but structural. The story seems to collapse along with the faith the characters had in the system they defended. But the truth begins to emerge slowly and uncomfortably. Julius's death was not what it seemed. What appeared to be a perfect attack, a silent execution, begins to show cracks. The clues make it clear that it didn't make sense for someone of his level. The absence of resistance, the coldness of his body, the ease with which everything happened. Little by little, Wistoria ceases to be a story about an external enemy and becomes a story about internal betrayal. And that's where the biggest lie begins to reveal itself. The danger was never just outside the tower. It was always inside. The Gothia sect emerges as a key piece in this revelation. Unlike what many believed, they are not simply chaotic destroyers who want to see the world burn. Their motivation stems from a complete disbelief in the prophecy that underpins the current world. For them, the barrier is not salvation, it is prison. The tower does not protect, it hides. And Baal, treated as the avatar of the apocalypse, ceases to be merely an entity of absolute evil and comes to represent something no one wants to face: the possibility that the entire official history is wrong. This shift in perspective is brutal because it doesn't transform villains into heroes, but destroys the comfortable idea that there is a completely right side. Charles is the character who most blatantly exposes this lie. As someone deeply involved with the structure of the tower, he knows its secrets, its limits, and its flaws. When he tries to free Baal, it's not out of impulse or pure madness. It's a conscious choice, based on the belief that the world lives under a false promise. The failure of this plan, and his transformation into a monster, doesn't provide easy answers. On the contrary, it raises even more disturbing questions. If magic can corrupt in this way, if monsters can be born from humans who have gone too far, then how many of the creatures faced so far truly began that way? At this point in the story, Wistoria makes it clear that the monsters are not merely external threats without origin. The possibility that many of them were once human completely changes the weight of the conflicts. The fight ceases to be merely physical and becomes moral. The tower, which should be a symbol of protection, reveals itself to be a place that manipulates, watches, and hides fundamental truths. Cameras, internal espionage, clones, puppets. All of this is not an exception, it's part of the system's functioning. The biggest lie isn't just about Baal or the barrier. It's about who really decides what is true. Will is right in the center of this collapse. He's not someone driven by grand speeches or complex ideologies. He acts because he feels something is wrong. As the pieces fall into place, he realizes that the world he swore to protect isn't so different from those called enemies. The fact that Julius is alive, working behind the scenes, using clones and hidden strategies, doesn't bring relief. It brings unease. Because it proves that even the ultimate symbols of justice believe that lying is necessary to keep everything functioning. This is where a quick pause is worthwhile, almost like a thought thrown into the midst of chaos. If you enjoy stories that don't treat the audience like fools, that build real mysteries and have the courage to break their own foundations, it's worth following this type of analysis more closely. Sticking around, supporting, and subscribing ends up being a way to continue this conversation, because Wistoria clearly hasn't finished revealing everything it hides. 1.728 As the story progresses, the feeling is that there is no going back to the status quo. The tower has been exposed. The barrier is no longer an absolute truth. Baal is no longer just a forbidden name. and the so-called villains can no longer be seen as mere irrational threats. Wistoria's greatest lie is not a phrase spoken aloud. It is an entire system built on fear, control, and convenient versions of reality. And now that this lie has been revealed, the world of the story can no longer pretend that nothing happened. What is most impactful is that Wistoria doesn't offer easy answers after this revelation. It doesn't say who is right. It doesn't point to an obvious path. It only shows that the truth, when it finally appears, is too heavy to fit into simple labels. And that is exactly what transforms this revelation into one of the strongest moments in the manga. Not because of the immediate shock, but because of the constant feeling that everything that comes from here on will be built on ruins.